It's an understatement, isn't it, to say becoming a parent is a life-changing experience. It's arguably the most significant thing that you can ever do in your entire life, creating another life. There's no parallel in my mind. But what we need to do is pause every now and then and consider how devastating it must be to experience a stillbirth. More than 2,000 babies are stillborn every year. That's 1 in 135 pregnancies. Now, I can't even begin to imagine what that must be like. Sadly, we are behind the rest of the world bringing that number down. But now we hear some new news that one of the solutions might be as simple as the way you sleep in bed of a night. Yes, it could be that simple. To tell us more, it's a very good afternoon to Claire Moore, the founder and CEO of Stillbirth. Hi, Claire.
Hi, how are you going, Alan?
Good. Thanks for coming in. Tell us your story. How you founded Stillbirth.
Yes.
Tell us the story. There's a moving story behind it, isn't there?
Yeah, look, when I was pregnant after having 3 years of IVF to conceive our beautiful daughter Alfie, we had a textbook pregnancy, and for those who can't see, I'm doing inverted commas because there's no such thing in my book of a textbook pregnancy, but everything was great. I mean, I was so ready to be a mum. We were so ready to be parents. And
you were healthy throughout the pregnancy,
healthy,
and all good?
Perfect. There was nothing wrong with my pregnancy. Everything was fine, sound, wonderful. And then at 9 months, so in my 40th week of pregnancy, after reduced fetal movements, which I didn't realise was a reason for concern, I went in believing that I was going to deliver a healthy, well baby and bring her home. And instead, I was told 3 devastating words that would forever change my life was, there's no heartbeat. And that emotion is still to this day a very, very inexplainable emotion. Everything from, totally incomprehensible to wanting to scream, lash out, cry, and be left alone, be hugged, just disbelief in what I was actually hearing. But then I actually had to go ahead and deliver our beautiful daughter Alfie, who was born perfectly into this world with no illness, no abnormality, no medical predisposition to any sickness, but she was born beautifully, just without breath. It was both her birth and death simultaneously, and it's an uncomfortable subject, sure, stillbirth, but it is still birth. I was met with an enormous amount of grief and pain and loss, but also love, because this was the time I was getting to parent her, and I'd have to give her back, which is a devastating thing, to try and leave a hospital with empty arms and a completely empty heart, believing that, and that's not how I should have felt as a first-time mum. It was completely something new and indescribable. But unfortunately, when I was met with meeting her, I was told how rare it was and how unlucky I was, which is not very helpful information.
No, not at the time, is it?
Not at the time. But
no.
I mean, when I realised how common it actually is and that it's not rare, I literally went through the ABS data and the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare data, and I counted myself because I just thought this cannot be true. But I realised that it was 6 babies every day in Australia. Every day, 6 babies, 6 families. A family every 4 hours had to go through what my family had to go through, and delivering a baby stillborn in that devastating silence and not being able to bring them home, and a majority of the cases with nothing wrong with their baby and without warning. There is so much information that I deserved in pregnancy that I wasn't given, and I thought I must have missed something. So I went around the world effectively looking for charities, organisations, information about stillbirth. And I realised that there was no organisation in Australia that shared information about stillbirth prior to the fact. I had every app under the sun, every book. I had an obstetrician, a hypnobirthing instructor, an acupuncturist, a midwife, a yoga teacher. I literally had the whole kit and caboodle for my healthy pregnancy. But not one of those people mentioned stillbirth as a possibility.
And that's what happened.
Yeah, and my baby was stillborn. Alfie died when she should be here living. And had I been given very simple information, which is where Stillbirth comes in, on monitoring my baby's movements, that would have saved her life. And the same way, something so simple as sleeping on your side in pregnancy has the potential to reduce stillbirth as well.
And that's what this, has prompted this discussion. The new study has found that sleeping on your side in the third trimester particularly can actually ease the risk.
Exactly.
Do we know why?
Yes. Well, it's actually, it does make total sense when you think about it. So the inferior vena cava, which is basically an artery that runs down the back of us, when you lay flat on your back, particularly in pregnancy, as you can imagine, third trimester, so 28 weeks onwards, that baby is quite big and quite solid. So when you lay on your back, it puts pressure on that artery. And so what that does is reduce oxygen flow to mum and to placenta, so effectively baby. So you're reducing oxygen flow by laying on your back. As soon as you settle to sleep on your side, you're encouraging the best source of oxygen to you and your baby while you're sleeping. So you're sleeping safe for your baby. It's very, very simple. It makes total sense. And now that we have the studies to prove that, we can actually say that it actually reduces stillbirth sleeping on your side.
And it makes perfect sense too, particularly in the third trimester, because that's where the baby is requiring more oxygen, because it's bigger and it's still continuing to grow. So it ticks all the boxes.
It does. It
Something
ticks all
so
the boxes.
basic.
Something so basic.
Yeah.
So there's two things that pregnant mothers can do. And I say pregnant mothers, but I mean the whole family. Everyone can get involved in this. It's not just about the mother doing the work. Is listening to your baby, learning about who your baby is inside. So that means learning who the personality of that baby is. So does your baby move often, or is your baby a chilled little mover? Whatever it is normal for you and your baby should remain the same throughout your pregnancy, and the same to be said for that third trimester. That's when you have a really good understanding of your baby's movements. And anything that differs from what's normal for your child must be reported.
Now, that's a really, really pertinent point for me, particularly at the moment. My cousin's daughter had a scan last Monday.
Congratulations.
Twins, everything perfect. She had a cesarean on Tuesday and she now only has one baby at home.
That's devastating.
There was a stillbirth involved.
Yeah.
There was an irregularity that night and she went to the hospital the next day. It was too late. So that comes down to your advice. If there's ever a change, make sure you report it straight away.
I'm so sorry about your friend.
No, thank you.
And that's a really tough
one. But
it
also
isn't it?
backs up, doesn't it, what you were saying?
Absolutely.
How many times this happens per week?
Absolutely. Not just per week, but every day, 6 families. So, and it's a hard figure to comprehend. But if we compare it to what's happening in Australia, it's double the amount of the national road toll. It's 14 times more common than SIDS. It actually is the leading cause of death among infants in Australia. But yet it never gets talked about. Why? Is it uncomfortable? Is it inevitable? Well, those two things are false. It's neither uncomfortable nor inevitable. The discomfort potentially comes from the person delivering the information, but not from the person receiving it, we've found. The discomfort, and it is certainly not inevitable in the sense that we know it is somewhat preventable, and we've just given 2 really simple ways to prevent stillbirth: sleeping on your side in the third trimester and monitoring your baby's movements and reporting change. And reporting change immediately. So if anything is different for your baby, go in straight away, even if it's the middle of the night. Even if you've got an obstetric appointment the next day, don't wait. You are your baby's best advocate. So it's really important that you let that baby speak through you.
Absolutely. What wonderful advice. Let's speak to our other guest. Danielle Pollock is here. And mum-to-be, congratulations.
Thank you so much, Alan.
How long have you got to go?
Oh, goodness, 7 weeks, I think.
7 weeks, okay. Put the kettle on. Put the kettle on, Josh, just in case. Have you been keeping well?
Yeah, extremely well this pregnancy.
You're looking great.
Thank
You're
you.
glowing. You've got that glow about you. But look, you've been on the other side of this as well, because you've been through a stillbirth experience, haven't you?
Yes,
with your first.
My daughter Sophia, she was stillborn at 23 weeks. She was growth restricted, and unfortunately that meant that she passed away at 23 weeks. And then my subsequent child was also growth restricted. So I'm a high-risk pregnancy for this one as well.
But your subsequent child, who is...
Charlie.
Little Charlie, is now a healthy little 2.5-year-old.
Yes, 2.5-year-old.
Yeah. But all good.
All good. Caught up on growth and is a very active little boy.
So just picking up on what Claire said, what you learned from the first tragedy in your childbirth actually helped you on the second round.
It did. I was not afraid to speak up. always go in when I needed to, when I felt a change, and there was a change in Charlie's movements. Around 34 weeks, he stopped growing, and his movements decreased. And it wasn't until I was able to constantly go in, and it was constant, it wasn't just one time, and just keep telling my healthcare professionals that I didn't feel his movement as much. He felt sick in my eyes, and I just felt like it wasn't him. That I was listened to and I was induced earlier, and I was very thankful we did, because his placenta wasn't healthy, he wasn't healthy, so it was good to have my voice heard, and I wouldn't have been as strong, I think, if I hadn't had the stillbirth of my daughter Sophia.
What you're both saying, it makes so much sense, doesn't it? Because it's going on, the baby is you.
Yeah.
I mean, as a dad, I can sit back and say, oh, yes, I had a role in it too, but the baby is you. It's inside you. It is growing inside you. It is part of you until it's born. So you really must know what's going on.
Absolutely.
You know, in a bizarre sort of way, whether you know the medical facts or not. So it makes perfect sense that you need to be going on tapping on doors if you think something's amiss. And that's a classic case, isn't it, Danielle? That's what you did.
Yes, I did.
Kept on knocking on the door and not taking no for an answer.
Pretty much.
Yeah. What do you think about this advice of something as simple as sleeping on your side in the third trimester?
I absolutely adore it. It's a strategy that I've been using. It is probably one of the most comfortable positions for a pregnant woman anyway. But I find that it's kind of like the information we receive about smoking, eating healthy. It's another tool and a strategy to keeping me safe and keeping my baby safe. So I find it, I like being very informed, and it's a bit empowering as well. But it's so simple, such a simple strategy, and it can be quite effective.
Let's just go back to where this discussion began of you know, where Claire Foord, you're the founder and CEO of Still Aware. How did you get over that?
I don't think you ever get over
No,
it.
okay.
You know, look, it doesn't actually get better. The loss of a child lives with you forever. Alfie's still my daughter, and she grows up with my subsequent children, but in a very different way. I just don't get to parent her here. Instead, she sort of parented me in a way, because children change your life. I never anticipated that she quite would change my life this way. I can't go back. I wish I could. Boy, oh boy, I wish I could. I wish that somebody had given me this information, because it would have kept her safe and she would be here alive and well. And as would 3 babies every day in Australia. We're talking about 50% reduction in stillbirth by using these methods. Really simple stuff that can save lives. But nobody did. So we only exist because we have to. Still Aware is the only organisation solely dedicated to raising awareness of stillbirth in pregnancy. We work very closely with researchers, which is where this great information comes from, actually through Tommies.org, which is a UK company and charity who we have an alliance with in the UK. Same with Star Legacy in the US. We have an alliance with them. So we're really working very, very closely with those here in Australia, but also overseas, to share the knowledge we already know. But until Still Aware existed, nobody was doing this. So, Alan, I never got over it. But you do get better at it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Something
it does,
can trigger you, and you you can be a crying mess. But the thing is, even through that, instead of I sort of channel and I talk about how much you can do with anger. So I was very angry at losing Alfie, and I still am, because I deserved that information. But I'm not angry at one particular person or one particular method. But I'm angry because 6 families a day have to do this.
Have to still repeat this.
And 20 years ago, in Norway, they were already adopting this. And in 20 years, they've seen a reduction in 50%. So if we had done what Norway did 20 years ago, we'd probably be in a much better situation. But instead, we sit back and we ignore what we think is inevitable and what is uncomfortable. And we decide to give it even more stillness and even more silence. But I no longer want to do that.
And is that because, I mean, I'm getting as frustrated as you listening to you.
Yeah.
Is that because we're not going to head down that path and have the discussion that we're having now?
Perhaps, but they cannot be game, but I'm still going to be here.
Hey, look, let's have the discussion.
Yeah,
I mean, the more we
absolutely.
talk about these things, the more we get it out
And
in
Alan,
the public sphere.
It's exactly right. You know, how many of us know about safe eating in pregnancy? So not to eat soft cheeses and cold meats and things like that. You already said the statistic, but the stats on listeria, now this is not to discount it. It's still very, very important. But everyone, the local butcher knows what to say to a pregnant woman and has no shame in saying, hey, don't eat this bung of Fritz or don't eat this soft cheese from the cheesemonger. Oh, you're pregnant. It's not for you, is it? The rates of listeria in pregnancy, just to get sick, not death, is 1 in over 20,000. But for every healthy pregnancy, it's 1 in 135 for stillbirth. So those statistics speak for themselves. It is far, far greater than many things, but yet it is completely smothered by not wanting to talk about it. And that needs to change. And we also need to change how we think about that word. Stillbirth is not awful. It's still birth.
Birth, yeah. No, lovely point. And look, we'll leave with that positive point. How can we get involved? How do we get the message out?
Absolutely. So head to stillaware.org. There's plenty of information there about keeping babies safe in pregnancy, and the video is there about how to sleep on your side and also about monitoring movements. And of course, there's a petition you can sign to get government to listen up and change and mandate policy too.
And we find that on the website?
The website,
stillaware.org. Okay, let's get on board, everyone. Log on to that now and sign up. And let's push the government to bring this to the fore a little bit more and stop hiding under the pillow about it. Pardon the pun. When you're sleeping on your side on the third trimester. And Danielle, all the best to you.
Thank you so much.
Let us know what you have, won't you?
I'm having a baby girl.
Oh, it's a girl, you already know. Oh, okay. Fantastic. Well, congratulations and all the best with it.
Thank you so
much.
much.
We'll look forward to a little cuddle when it happens. Thanks so much, Claire Foord, as well, from stillaware.org. Log on and do your best.